Hello. This is my very first film review, so I'm feeling kind of shy, kind of nervous. I'm always looking for an opportunity to chat about films, so here we are. Let's get into it. A few days ago, I watched a really great film in IMAX theater, Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by none other than Martin Scorsese. Marty is a bit of a gender bender, as some people may know. He's directed films like Hugo, The Age of Innocence, Shutter Island, Silence, all of which differ vastly in theme and genre. But he's also directed films like Taxi Driver, The Gangs of New York, The Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, and these films sort of have more of his trademark on them, especially in their shared themes and genre of crime, cruelty, violence, corruption, and so forth. So Killers of the Flower Moon sort of falls into the same category. It's like a Western crime thriller. It is unique given the subject matter, but it just has that Scorsese sauce to it, if you know what I mean. It's an incredibly disturbing yet engaging film that's filled with violence, corruption, trauma, tragedy, twists, and turns. And even though it was a hard watch, it was a hard and an uncomfortable thing to watch, it was still an amazing experience watching it.
You know, you got nice color skin. What color would you say that is?
My color.
The film itself is based on a novel, and the novel is based on real-life events, so without spoiling too much of the plot, I'll give a really brief summary. The film accounts a series of brutal events surrounding the Osage tribe between 1910 to 1912, I believe, and the main conflict is between the Osage tribe and the conspirators who plot to trick the Osage out of their wealth, their land, and their resources. Does that sound familiar? Aside from the legitimate educational value of the film and the insight it offered into Osage history, the story itself is riveting. It's beautifully shot. The acting, which I'll discuss more later, is powerful and intense. And the film is just so atmospheric and immersive that I couldn't help feeling as though I were experiencing everything firsthand. Now, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece or anything. That's just my personal opinion, but it was still a stunning film nonetheless. With that said, I'd give it a 3.8 out of 5, and that's primarily because the film was just so fucking long. It was 3 hours and 30 minutes, and my attention span is just non-existent, so it felt a bit like forever. Also, the film is very slow paced, and I personally would have benefited from subtitles. The theater I was in didn't have any. The Osage dialect is heavily integrated throughout the film, which I did like a lot and found it added great value to the film and to the story itself. But at the same time, as a viewer, you're left relying on facial expressions and gestures to contextualize what's happening in a scene where you don't understand what's being said. That may very well have been intentional, but again, that's just a personal preference of mine. So it was a 3.8 out of 5 in my eyes. But I also think I have a bit of a unique experience because I watched the film in non-chronological order like a silly goose. My boyfriend and I, before the film, and we were just really amped to watch it. So we ended up stumbling into the wrong theater. And when we did, we were immediately engaged by this horrific fire scene. So much so that we didn't realize that, it was 2 hours into the screening. We were lucky enough to theater hop into another screening that was 30 minutes into the film, not too bad. And although we already knew how it ended, we really just wanted more. We wanted more of the experience because we felt as though we were missing out on something special, okay? I'd also like to discuss Lily Gladstone, who is the actress portraying Molly Burkhart. Lily is of Indigenous heritage, and she was just amazing in this film. Her performance really stood out to me, and I think that says a lot considering that Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio were also performing alongside her. But Lily, she learned how to speak the Osage dialect so well, and she portrayed a really complex character who came with a range of complicated emotions. Every scene Lily's in, she kind of just steals the show, and I liked that because her character, along with the Osage tribe as a whole, are the primary bearers of tragedy. in the entire context of the story. I'd also like to recognize that Martin Scorsese casted the appropriate people for this film. I know there are grievances that he didn't cast Osage actors to play Osage roles, but I still think he did a good thing, and credit ought to be given where it's due, because not every director makes the same choices or understands why appropriate casting is always necessary. Let's not forget about Twilight and how Taylor Lautner, a white man who claims to have extremely distant indigenous heritage and passes as non-white, was casted as an indigenous werewolf. Producers already had Christopher Hyatt casted as Jacob Black, but he refused to cut his hair for them, so they called up Shark Boy, and they said he'll do just fine. Marty would never do that, and I think it's great that he came across this story, this monumentally tragic part of Osage history, and thought it was something the whole world should know about. He called me up and told me he was cooking something, and I said, is it gonna be like The Irishman? Because that wasn't so great, Marty. And he told me to just watch it. He said, watch and you'll see. Because he's a great pal of mine, he's like my grandfather, I said, of course. I watched it. I loved it. I learned a lot. Marty wasn't lying. He was cooking, and I ate that shit up. And Gordon Ramsay would have definitely approved. If the 3.5-hour runtime scares you, I'd say suck it up, because you'd be missing out on a really great experience otherwise. Anyways, that's all for now. Cheers.